It's not. There will not be a tree committee report tonight. So we might as well move right on. Unless you want to do the things you suggested first.
Well, as a matter of fact, I would like to say something about the minutes. Just that when I was looking at the website for other reasons, I looked under Jack and none of the minutes are present since I think 2018.
Yeah, and that's a concern. Honestly, at 2018, I can't remember the exact date, but Nick should still have been with us for a while, 2018. I can't remember exactly when he left. And so that would have been his responsibility to record those formally and send them to the archive. And then since then, we've had on and off again secretaries.
Well, the website was updated, so it's possible the information's there and never got loaded on.
That could be, but I'm not even sure at this point who somebody has to do it. There have been changes in planning and zoning in terms of staffing. So as I said, many times I go over there and they don't know who I am. And honestly, I don't know who they are either. I have to go over next week and I can say,
Yeah, because I know those minutes were there before the website was updated.
all right, so
So
then
they
there's somewhere,
exist.
around-
They
okay,
exist, yes.
Good, that's
And I don't know about the ones that, since it's been updated,
Yeah.
what's happened to those.
yeah.
And is Melanie still, because I thought she was graduating, she's still.
But she was, yeah, but she had planned on being here tonight, except for being sick. I guess I'm not sure where she's living, but she said there's a lot of people sick.
Oh.
And she's coming down some.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want to talk about the invasive rose and Clark Reservation, and then we'll move on to the whole idea of the things we've already done that the town board is.
Sure, so it sent out a attachment invitation about invasive Rosa multiflora. I'm a consulting rosarian, and so I walk through Clark Reservation pretty often, and I noticed this spring that there's a rose there that's not a native rose. That's part of the on the invasive species list for the state of New York. And it's a pretty big problem in the Northeast as well as in the Midwest, and some places in the South for agriculture as well as forests, because the shrub rose can get extremely large, and it crowds out other native plants in the process, and it's very easily spread by seed as well as by under the root structure grows, sideways and then pops up again. So when I noticed it, I contacted Angela, who put me in touch with Michael Service, who's the invasive species specialist for the region at the headquarters at Clark Reservation. And together we came up with a plan to begin a control project to identify the invasive rose and to remove it and safely dispose of it to prevent it from spreading. So this pilot project is going to be on Monday morning from 9 to noon, and if we have enough people, a second session Monday from 1 to 4. And I put out messages to the Rose Society, Master Gardeners, Friends of Clark Reservation, Town Hall here. I wanted to invite the town staff because the idea is if anyone can identify this rose and know that it's there, they can get rid of it in their own yard. Like I identified it at Clark Reservation, I identified it at the Mills Garden. But even before that, I identified it in Lexington, Kentucky, where my parents lived, in their shared garden space for their community, and I removed it. So it's not rocket science. It's actually not that hard to do. And so if we learn as a community, we can get work in New York State and our region to get rid of this invasive species. And in the agricultural area, things don't like to eat it. So if you think about raising animals that would kind of eat anything, they won't eat this. So they'll just graze around it, eat down all the grass around it. That particular Rosa flora will just be hanging out in the middle of a pasture. And then people will then use noxious chemicals to get rid of it. So then you have noxious chemicals added to the problem of the invasive species. So this control measure is going to be mechanical, meaning that it's going to be shovels and hand tools and pruners to get rid of it and try and disturb the soil and other plants around it as little as possible under the direction of the park conservation staff. Because they've been working on these species this whole summer.
Sonia, how far down do those roots go? Do you know? I'm a little
They're the
nervous.
ones I've seen are actually quite superficial. It's not that hard for the newer established plants. But for the big, huge shrub roses, that's a different story.
Okay,
Because they could even be growing under and around other trees.
Mhm.
And other plants.
yeah.
And then I don't know enough about the not disturbing the duff and the other things in the forest floor, and how to protect that the best. So I think I'll be learning along with others at this removal. I don't expect that we're gonna have to put a chain around it and yank it out, but that there may be some really large ones. Since I mentioned it to Mike, he went out to plot it and he thought we got 3 to 4 days worth of doing this. And I just saw a few plants, so there's many that are tucked in the woods that aren't right on the path, well, I identified that were right on the path.
An awful lot of that soil there is extremely shallow because the rock, the limestone is right under.
Yeah.
it. And yeah, I mean, unless the root system is strong enough to get in the crevices and literally get under the rock table, it might just rip out with grunt work.
Yeah, and if people are free, I mean, it's a nice walk along the main path, Mildred Gauss Trail and Park Preservation, and there is some areas that need to be addressed right at the parking lot. So if somebody felt like they did want to do love the park, wanted to and I sent it to Shannon in the Recreation Department and Rocco in the Highway Department, Parks Department to encourage if any staff might come. Because again, if even one person in the Parks Department learns about this, then they, as they do their work all around town, then have an eye out for it to remove that invasive species as they go. So, if anybody, the Grove Society is having Mike Service come and give an in-service to us on, ouch, sorry, my dog is stepping my toe. August 10th at 6:30 at the Reformed Church of Syracuse. So if you want a more formal presentation, then come and attend that, or be in touch with me about it. And then we're also gonna present this at the New York State Fair. At the Rose Society booth, and the New York State Department, Parks Department is right outside the horticulture building where we have our booth, so if there's questions that come up, we can certainly pop over and ask them, you know. Try and get master gardeners involved, because again, I think there's such a presence for them in gardens that they should be able to identify it and help too, but this is just a, you know, pilot program getting it started.
So now, has this problem been identified at the reservation before? I don't remember hearing of, dealing with it, and I've been around here a long time.
Well, Mike knew about it, and the way he explained it is that the areas it's located are not troublesome for any of the endangered species they're currently worried about protecting. So they kind of just have been leaving it alone. It's kind of like the buckthorn that's all along Mildred Faust. There's no worry to a lot of the other plants that are there, and everybody knows it's invasive, but to remove the buckthorn would be at least 2 or 3 years, including replanting other species to eradicate it. So this is not as big a problem as the buckthorn there. But you know, how big a problem it could become, I don't know, we've got climate change, we've got all kinds of things that may change the behavior of invasive species. So if you identify it and you can't easily get rid of it, I don't think it's gonna be that hard to.
Yeah, you could not get rid of the buckthorn in some of those places without a chainsaw.
Yeah.
If you walk directly back from where I live, and it's a matter of how many feet we are from the trail. But you can't get through it. It's like barbed wire, and they're brutal. And they're fully formed trees. They're not just.
Yeah.
And they grow incredibly fast. They're encroaching into our yard. We've lost. The survey for our property says it goes up to the old fence at Clark Reservation. Well, the fence is now buried under all these buckthorns, so you would never know there was a fence.
Do it even here.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And I apologize for short notice on this, but we put this together and the timeline fits with the Parks Department schedule being a Monday through Friday. And then they're gonna be gearing up to go to the state fair and work there, so again, it's a pilot, and we may do another one in the fall after the state fair ends. So I reach out again, and if you know anybody who you think might be interested, just give them my email to contact me or share the invitation that I sent to you all. Angela and I will be here.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So the big thing I wanted to talk about, and as I said, I'm kind of disappointed that nobody from the town board actually came here, is that as we know, we have 3 specific distinct projects that we have submitted to the town board, including Brian's report on the critical environmental area. That's gotta be 5 or 6 years ago that we gave them the entire 40+ page report. And we really, for each one of them, they're in limbo right now. The board is aware, well, most of the board members are aware of what we've submitted. As Max Repeshel and Sarah Hood are new within the past election term, so they're not aware of these things. But I'm thinking, especially since I've asked for some response from the board and not gotten anything, that it might be time for us to pick one at a time of our topics and get on an agenda and represent. I mean, Angela, we sat in this room and presented, you know, what you did, and everybody thought it was a good idea, and nothing's happened.
Wasn't the CEA, wasn't that requested? Weren't we requested to do that by the board?
Yes, it's a part of the strategic plan,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I think part of that's the more complicated of the 3. I know Ed was thinking that maybe that needed to be subdivided in some way to attack different geographic areas within that, but also different. That he's concerned, for example, about the cedars that grow up against the side of 481 on Rock Cut Road, on the north side of 481. And he was thinking maybe something like that is a particular topic that could be addressed, and then another part could be a separate thing. But the report that you presented and the sustainability, I think, could be. We could remind them, pick one, go to the board, tell them it's on the agenda. Remind them that they've already heard this, and can they get on with it? And
Dennis, can you talk a little more about the cedars? I don't understand. That doesn't.
if you're on 41, between Brighton Ave and Janesville Road, just trying to think exactly where it is. There's a whole section of cedars. Are you familiar with Old Stonehouse Road?
I'm familiar with, well, I live right there. I know what cedars you're talking about, but I don't understand why they were mentioned.
Well, I think Ed is concerned that we could lose them. That somebody, even with, I don't know, with the 481 project or something else, could just come and cut them all down. And he doesn't want that to happen.
So they are
But he needs to pass
on,
this. He needs to pass this.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs to pass this.
Well, that's what, but I'm rather than
It's
the
not
whole
Ed, it's the town.
right,
board.
but the whole CSE, CEA might be too much because there are a lot of different issues in there. But if he took one and started and somehow protected those, then that might be a start. Again, I'm
Cedars-
speaking for. Yeah,
those cedars, I believe, are on the mining company land, or
Mm-hmm.
most of them are.
I don't know. I think most of them are east. It's gotta be east of Old Stonehouse Road. So I don't know if that's the
Well,
mine.
it's actually west. The ones I'm thinking of are west of Stonehouse.
Okay, so we might be
There are a
thinking
lot
2
there.
different
Yeah.
areas of the cedars. Whatever it
Even
is,
east of Stonehouse, isn't that mining company land there too?
I don't know. There's at the top of the hill is the church.
Mhm.
I don't think going down the hill, there's much of anything. That's where Brian did all his cleanup that one year, where he just pulled out literal tons of.
But that is
debris.
that is part of it is belongs to an organization affiliated with the church, very small part, but the rest of it pretty much is mining company land. And I
That could
sensed
be,
a hesitancy on Ed's part to be too proactive, to not poke the bear, so to speak.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
my sense is that this is why they are holding back on the E CEA.
I think that's definitely true between, yes, between, I don't even know the name of the mining company now, because when you drive down, Janesville Road by the quarry entrance, it says Heidelberg Materials.
Yes, it's Heidelberg. It's not Hanson anymore. It's
That's
it's
what
a
I- yeah.
German company now. So
Right, I think Hanson, was German, but it's gotta be a different German company or they
Yeah.
changed their name, one way or another. You're right, I think he doesn't want to get in a big fight with them, but an awful lot of what's in the report addresses land that belongs to that company. And,
yes, that's true.
But this is not a legal document, it's a, I don't know, if I remember, like a recommendation that this all. Placement, it needs to get legal, it needs to get registered in the state to have it filed.
Right.
So I know he's worried about legal challenges and everything, but it's not that kind of a legal document.
well, ours is, but you would like it eventually.
Right, but you know what, the longer you wait, nothing happens. The worst case scenario is it gets shot down. And then we're no worse than we are now, which is inaction for 4 years.
Yeah.
Inaction is not an answer.
I understand.
I mean, 481's falling around the corner and it's gonna affect that area for sure. It's gonna be noise on for the bats, it's gonna be pollution, but you know,
I said, yes,
it's gonna be trees coming down, so if it doesn't get registered now, I wouldn't even bother. Once the construction starts, I mean,
so
people
that's,
disagree.
No, I mean, we can still use it as it exists. I mean, we can hold it up and show people this. But and even I'm not convinced it has much more power if it's passed and filed as it does right now. It really doesn't. I mean, it's just a pointing out of areas that are sensitive, basically is what it is. I'm not familiar with what, if it is passed by the town, how that makes it any stronger of a document than it is now. It's just the town board has condoned it and said, this is how we feel. But other than that, I mean, all the information is there. And DAC could use that if things come up, they could submit, I assume, I'm not sure how that works, but I assume I could use, it's an informational.
As an organization of volunteers, we've passed it.
Yeah.
Among
Yes,
ourselves.
exactly.
And these are the recommendations that our group feels.
so my understanding, and again, Brian's not here tonight, but I think, assuming that the town board passed it, which would be before they pass it, they have to go through all the lawyers and everything. Then it would be forwarded onto the state.
Right.
That would actually have to create an enforcement
Right.
mechanism.
Oh, okay, so there is possible enforcement mechanism.
Yeah, but you're right, it wouldn't be at the town level, but, yeah,
Okay, because that is, I can see now where Ed anticipates blowback, because it's not just an informational statement, it can be acted on.
yeah.
Yes, is what you're
But there
saying.
may not be, I mean, I think a lot has changed in the last 4 years, and there's businesses that want to be good stewards to the environment. And if they don't know what they don't know.
Mhm.
So this is an opportunity, and they may not be good stewards, and they may wanna bulldoze right through, but if they do differently, they might do things differently.
Yeah.
And we saw that when we went on for a tour with Roselli and the old quarry, that there's thought process going on while they're still running their business there.
Yeah.
So,
And some of it might depend on the attitude of this Heidelberg Materials. They may not even care about that property anymore, it might just be a nuisance to them. So I guess the thing is to pick either sustainability or what you presented. Either one would require changes to the town. The town law, and to create new ordinances or modified ordinances or new language. That should not need to go beyond the town level, right? But they need to act on them, as again, we've never formally, we submitted the sustainability.
We've never
Right, policy.
formally presented the
We've never presented.
sustainability policy, and I met with Ed several months ago,
Right.
and he read it very thoroughly and was working on some rewrites and additions and corrections, but supported it very strongly. So again, I realize there's meticulous detail, but if he changes something and then the board wants to change something else, it does, to me, it makes most sense to put it before the board so everybody gives their input. Because they may agree
Yeah.
with everything the supervisor said and we said, and in the meanwhile, so I submitted it December 2021. That's how long ago it was, and there's been all kinds of new things that have happened now that I would put in that sustainability plan, but you just gotta, it's kind of like stop the clock somewhere and just move on it. Knowing there's gonna be changes, and it was written to be goals for a decade.
Mhm.
Keep those, the language was written so that there was progress in the language, so we all thought that through as we wrote it, so. I think it's okay the way it is now, you know.
Yeah.
But we just need to get it on the agenda.
So what I can do is send him an email and directly to him, say, we want to address these two things at the board level. Which one would you prefer that we pick up first? And I can even say, I know that you met with Simon regarding sustainability and you had changed some stuff in what you submitted. Do you want to do that one first? Or and then, because we would like to get them done.
Right, and keeping in mind that there's new board members who haven't sat at the table with us ever.
Right.
And. You know,
Right. And it's an election year, so who knows what will happen. You know,
Oh,
2020.
that's a good point. We really need to push this.
Yeah, and Ed said it was his goal to pass everything we've put in front of him in 2023, but I am getting a little nervous because it's
Well,
August.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking.
Yeah,
Well, we know Karen Doctor will be done in December, so she's not running for reelection. So if everybody else wins their reelection, there's still a seat that somebody has to win. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's where we are with those two things. I'll ask Ed, what are which do you want us to do first, because we want to do it?
yeah, and things like the brush ordinance actually comes under the sustainability policy in some ways. It was written to be very specific, but that's kind of included.
Right.
And then our DAC charter and the tree committee
Yeah.
language. Did we actually put the tree committee modifications part of it, because we were gonna resubmit it all together, right? Did that happen?
Let me see, again, Jeff, I'll send an email to Dave and say, is that ready? Because they did make a bunch of changes.
Yeah, because we gotta get them all in there, maybe they can have a meeting, the DAC board meeting.
Yeah, and Dennis, you could, we're happy to attend any meeting that they want to have to talk
yeah.
about if they have issues, if they have any questions, if they have, whatever it takes.
Well, no matter what, it has to be an open meeting, so it has to be either the board meeting or it has to be this one. We can't just meet, for coffee at Wegmans and hash the whole thing out, because that would be illegal.
It's kind of
Unless
hard
we
to
invite everyone.
tell. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what has held these things up, because you think we would have heard if there were issues or questions or concerns that we would have heard back, and we really haven't heard anything. And
I'm speculating, but I think a lot of the issues in the last couple of years they were so overwhelmed with staffing issues.
Okay, there's the local law that is in front of the attorney right now. If you can read that. I really can't.
Like,
Oh, in the town of Manlius.
So this is a CEA that we did in the town of Manlius.
Okay.
2009,
Mhm.
but the framework is all there. So Matt Natoli has this.
And he has ours. We
Oh,
gave
to
him,
use as a framework, you're saying?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
so, how do I drag? Oh, I probably have to. Okay, I have to do it on my screen, right? So it's,
I mean, do we know that it's just a matter of Matt Natoli's backlog, or are there, we don't really hear much back on any of these things. That's I think the big
we
issue.
invited him, I don't know if you remember, we invited him to the meeting here.
so, what are
Yeah,
the,
and
it's not a very complicated. What are we looking at, 4 or 5 pages? Now, the place where I think it gets complicated, I think this is where people get wrapped around the axle. So it's a 6-page document. I don't see why we can't cut and paste this, but when you
And
look
how
at the
many
properties, right? In
how many
Manlius, they
area-
had 6 properties.
okay, 6 properties.
I think we have over 100.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's, and I don't know if it's gotta be a contiguous area. Yeah, Ed just sent me a note, right, that he wants the map, he doesn't want the owners to feel it's an unfair taking. So when you look at, see if I can find the map. This was the mapping.
Is there any legal justification for landowners to consider this to be a taking?
Well, it Manlius, we did not do a taking.
No, of course, yeah,
Just
and neither are we.
Zoning
so-
classification, so no one's taking any land,
Okay,
but basically, it's I'll probably use the wrong terminology. It's basically an overlay. So, some of these areas, like the land trust area, on the eastern end of the town, that shouldn't be, I wouldn't think that shouldn't be a problem. I would, the land trust would support that.
mhm,
Steep
Mhm.
slopes along the quarry, I think, there's gonna be some negotiation, but it's outside of an area where they're gonna mine anyways. So I think it would be a public relations plus for them. Now, when you go through and you look at everything, there's some slopes along here.
Yeah, I think that's where the cedars are.
Yeah, there's some slopes along here. So I don't know if you would have to do different classifications or not, or you could just do it in that description that I just showed, right, for different properties.
Is the purple, is that Conjals? Because he was also worried about Conjals property being in there. somewhere.
I think this one is Snooks Pond.
Okay, yeah, which is in Manlius. Yeah.
There's the town line.
Yeah.
And so this is land trust area.
Yeah.
Somewhere in here. Scale, I can't really tell. I think this is Rock Cut Road.
I think so.
It's like a hard time.
Rock Cut Road and some of it is North Street. Where the Alpha Portland property is.
I mean, no matter what, somebody's gonna be like, are you gonna take my land? But this is not about taking anyone's land. It's about recommendations
Yeah.
based on people knowing that this is a critical environmental
Right.
area.
But it's why this one topic is much more complicated than.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I also think like, you know. The cliffs behind the trailer park and all that, right? I mean. It's generally. It's generally land that nobody's gonna develop anyways,
Right,
right? So I don't think it's that, I don't think it's that heavy a lift, right? You just gotta go in and say, hey, this is what we wanna do, and oh, by the way, we're gonna give you. An attaboy for doing it.
Um,
for the sustainability policy, I think we should send the original document to the whole board again. Because Ed has edited it based on how he reads it, but I think we don't even know all Ed is, I'm the only person who's seen him that I reviewed with you what he found over with me. But that was again months ago, and I think, I mean, we passed an original document that we're expecting to be reviewed and acted on. And from the town board, not just the supervisor. But given the supervisor is the most experienced in the subject, not negating that by any means, but I think
he's the environmentalist.
yes.
Nobody else. So
Yes.
it's-
But the language has to suit everybody, I mean, it's the sustainable manliest, when you look at what they've done in the last couple of years. The language, lots of people can read that language and can act on it. So we need a document that is like that also. That's what my recommendation would be on that.
So I can communicate with them. And I can say, what if we do sustainability first? With the understanding that the brush ordinance is actually in some ways a subset of the of sustainability. And can we get something done on those? You have a plan and a policy, and you have changes to the code, can they be done? What is the process for getting it done? I mean, at some point, for everything, there has to be a public hearing. With 90% of the public hearings, nobody comes to. Except one or two people who have an actual interest or complaint. I maybe with the brush ordinance, maybe some people will be unhappy about something, but or sustainability, who knows? But you usually don't get that many people.
No, and we won't know until we have a public hearing,
Right.
so.
Can we request something for September?
I need to know, the middle, or it's the second week of September is when we're in the Adirondacks all week. So I need to know what the calendar, the board calendar is. So. Well, the first Monday is Labor Day. The second Monday is the 11th, which is probably a board meeting, but that's when I am out of town. And then there's only one other than 25th, which is the last Monday of the month. I would be.
Are they meeting in August now? Regularly? Too soon to get on
Maybe the second. Well, you know what? I don't know whether they're doing one or two meetings this month. Let me.
the. Oh, sorry. For the next board meeting.
We're wondering
likely
how many times the meeting is.
agenda in August.
I don't see why you couldn't do that. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. They're meeting Monday mornings now. Some weeks, there's a lot of stuff, some weeks there isn't, so I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah.
So the next meeting, I think, is next Monday. Probably 2 weeks from Monday would be
Well, that's
the time to get on.
Okay, so there's this is actually the 14th, which would not be next Monday. It would be the following. Right, because next Monday will be the 8th. Is that right?
Monday's the 7th.
The 7th, That's right, the seventh, okay, so 7th, 14th. There is no more meeting on the 7th, there is on the 14th, and then the 28th. Okay.
So should we request the fourth? I'm not here the 14th either. Unfortunately, the morning session leaves if Brian would be able to come to working.
Yeah.
He might be able to take off for the CEA.
Oh, actually, you know, and these are all listed as 8:30 meetings.
Would Monday, August 28th, the people here be able to attend? In the morning at 8:30?
I can. Except in that schedule, physical.
I have
8:30
out
in
of town
the
guests
morning?
that week, but I probably could attend a meeting, I think. In the morning.
All right. So let's theoretically aim for that one, the 28th. I will contact Ed, tell him we want to be on the agenda, we want to do sustainability. And if possible, brush ordinance. And if not the brush ordinance, then we'll do that the next time we can get on. And we'd like to see what they can get done. And Sonia, you can, and you have emails.
I don't know if I can get up from Angela.
Okay,
Yeah.
or you can just send it to her, she'll send it to
Yeah,
everybody.
or distribute it to everybody, yeah. Yeah, so we're asking for the sustainability policy for August 28th,
I would think,
and then the CEA, are they gonna switch back to the night meetings?
I haven't heard
September?
how to go on. So,
You know, because then maybe Brian, I think that if Brian could attend the one on the CEA,
Yeah.
he was the mastermind.
Right. Yeah, and we could just, as a sidelight, we come to a meeting, and say, just so you know. We want to go back to the CDA and something, so. I'm pretty sure I still have a couple of paper copies of the closet. That I gave everybody. Except Max and Sarah. Jason. It's only definitely, or Matt will definitely ask.
Max and Sarah.
What do you think? What do you think, Gordon?
I'm gonna have to study up what exactly you're talking about. I'm sorry, I had trouble getting into the meeting here for 10 minutes. I was trying to make my computer cooperate. So there's an issue regarding vegetation nearby the edge of the park of Clark Reservation. Is it? I gather that something along the road on the north side. Am I correct in that assumption?
You've got a couple things combined there. Sonia and Angela and a group of people are going to Clark Reservation next Monday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to attack some invasive roses along the Mildred Faust and maybe one or two other places. So that's one issue.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I mean,
Okay.
I think I understand that.
The second thing with the north side, we were talking about the critical environmental area report that Brian has already submitted. And I mentioned that Ed was thinking that in order to deal with things like that it might need to be subdivided because there are so many issues, and as Doug points out, so many properties involved. And,
Understand that also.
yeah,
Okay,
one of the things Ed had mentioned to me was that he's concerned about protecting the cedars along the north side of 481.
Protecting what?
The cedar trees. The cedar
Oh,
trees. So we talked about that, but what we really want is for the town board to start addressing some of the topics where we've written reports and sent them on to the board. So we're specifically, the first two would be sustainability and the brush ordinance. The brush, Angela presented to the town board probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before COVID. The thing that she did, and they all loved it, but that's as far as it's gone. So what my plan, my strategy is to contact Ed and say that your August 28th meeting, which is going to take place at 8:30 in the morning, we would like to be on the agenda, and we would like to talk about the sustainability plan and policy that has been created, and we would like you to act on it. And then as a corollary to that, can you act on the brush ordinance? And if that's too much for one meeting, can we, can they talk about one of these topics on the August meeting and one on the September meeting? We know that two of the board members, Max and Sarah, were not on the board when we presented all our stuff to the board. And in the meantime, the critical environmental area report, which we sent on to them many years ago now, still has not been acted on. And as I said, I'm thinking Ed is concerned about that. And what do they want to do about that, and when do they want to do it, and what's the strategy for that? So that's
Remind when you send that it's part of the strategic plan, ask for Jack to do that.
Yeah.
And we did it.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
so that's where we are.
how about a meeting with those two town board representatives?
I sent all of the town board members an email 2.5 weeks ago, telling them our concerns, that we're not happy that we keep doing this stuff and sending it to the board and nothing happens. And the only one who responded back to me was Max Rukdeschel, who said he'd be happy to sit down and talk with me. Should be us. And then I sent them a follow-up email inviting them to tonight's meeting. As you can see, nobody has shown up. So I would like to put the squeeze on them a little bit. I know it's election season.
Yeah, I am going to be inviting Climate Change Awareness and Action to come and attend the meeting, and people in Sustainable Manlius.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are. We would like to get all of this done for as much as possible in this calendar year before there is a change in the board in 2024. So we'll see what happens.
Perhaps if you kind of put the pressure on, and by way of asking for a meeting with individual members the CEA is a huge, big,
Yeah.
taken in whole, the CEA is something you can go on and on about
Right.
forever, but find out whether the general principle of the CEA is of any interest to start with. And then if you meet with a couple of them, the word will get around, hey, these guys are serious. Maybe a more inclusive meeting could be had with the toll board, or at some point on the Cedars. Somehow you're talking about this in relation to the CEA, not because of any particular action by the state right now, it's by the idea that there could be an action in relation to 481. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's Ed's fear, and that's why he zooms in on that. That they could, I mean, I don't know why they would damage those, because they are basically holding the side of the hill.
Right,
Yeah,
that's where the Nottingham is on that side.
yeah, well, they're not here across the street, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's on
Yeah.
that side of the highway, yeah.
And no, yeah, you're exactly right. So we've actually handed, and again, I'm thinking 5 or 6 years ago, Brian and Sonia and Ann and I went to a town board meeting, and Brian presented the CEA. We actually handed a physical copy, a 40-page copy of the report to every single board member, and Ed. The town attorney who was new, Matt Natoli, he was not at that meeting. He came on board afterwards, and we invited him to a meeting here, and we gave him a copy. And honestly, nobody has questioned it. Max Verdeshel and Sarah Hood were not on the board at that time. So my plan would be to hand each of those people, I think I have a couple copies left, hand it to them and say, this is something we're gonna be talking about. There's a lot to it. You know, just be thinking about this, because sooner or later, before the year's out, we would like something done. You know, if there's enough of a change in the personnel on the board, they could have new people throw the whole thing out, say, no, we don't have any interest in this.
So the first action, if I remember correctly, for the CEA is to have public meetings announced that will discuss particular properties and have an open public meeting that would attract landowners of the areas where that are included to be acted upon in the CEA. Is that correct? And then, so the first thing to be done, I want you to say, decide, okay, we have this CEA, let's pass the whole thing. But that doesn't mean anything is going to really very much happen, because you can't act upon protecting particular properties or having any effect on individual properties until the owners have been allowed to come to a public meeting and understand the significance of the CEA, et cetera.
Yeah, that's why it's a much more complicated topic, and that might be something, again, depending on. I can tell you that the board seats that are up for election this year are Kerry Mannion, Jack Dooling, and there will be an open seat because Karen Roberts is not running. So who knows? But if the two incumbents win, you don't know what the last person's going to do, and we don't know. Ed's up, up for re-election. Everybody's always on his case. So it's really kind of a crapshoot for that.
I have a question. The CEA do not specifically protect, does it? I thought that the purpose of the CEA was to point out that these properties are worthy of protection for these specific reasons, but doesn't actually have any power at all to do anything. It's just, it's there, should something happen, development plans, whatever, that we could bring this out and say, wait a minute, you really need to look at this. Is that correct? Or does the CEA actually protect those properties?
You're correct. It does not specifically correct, but it does do something which is supposedly to caused consideration of
Yes, okay.
environmental features
Yeah,
by, for example, the planning board, and it's mainly directions that or a set of concerns that the planning board has to consider. However, one of the things that over the years, we got somewhat less excited about the significance of the CEA because the planning board can always consider environmental issues when development for a property comes before them. It's just that the CEA makes it more widely known what environmental issues there are
okay,
in the town that must be taken into consideration
okay.
when development is proposed or put before the board, the planning board.
So it is an informational document, basically.
So am I right? It's totally powerless. It's just
Mhm.
helps.
Yeah.
It's,
and
it's totally powerless when we do it. If it moves further up the line to the town and then to the state, and if the state accepts it, then it's not powerless anymore, then it's what's required of property owners.
Oh,
And I think maybe that's part of Ed's concern is that some of these property owners might say, I have plans for this. And if they were then told, well, no, you can't do that. That's where you have a conflict.
I
I
think
know,
that
just
even-
for example, Brian has said that Hanson has always considered all of those supposedly dormant mine areas as active in their eyes, and I think that's a legal thing, he said, because if it's not active, then they have to reclaim them. They have
Yeah.
to spend all the
Yes.
money on reclamation, and they don't want to do that.
Yes, yes. And
So then they
they're
are saying,
all
no, it's,
active, yeah,
right, even the one across from Chips Deli, you know, in Janesville, where the guy grows his corn, that's all owned by Hanson, and it's quarry land, and theoretically, they can
They
go
have-
back there and start cutting it up.
active permits, yes, they do,
Right.
yeah.
So,
I
And
can't see
again,
that ever
until we
changing.
ask Or bring it to the public, we're not gonna find out any of those
Right.
questions, the
That's
public
true.
are like. Until it goes in front of the public, we're not gonna know, and maybe it'll get rewritten based on what the public says. This will bring up valid concerns that would lead you to write it a little differently, or.
that's, again, we're kind of, it's a vicious cycle with this one. Because we want them to address it. But there's a huge can of worms that they're gonna open once they address it, and it might end up taking forever to get something resolved. And again, that's, I think, why I was thinking of maybe doing bits and pieces of it. And not as one whole. I mean, the report itself, you know, as Doug said, the thing in Manlius is 6 pages long. Brian's is 40. And if they, you know, adopted that as a resolution to
Yeah.
accept this document as it is,
Mhm.
that's a major thing.
Well, that 6-page document may refer to the main document.
Because I
Yeah.
haven't seen it.
See the details. I had one, can we talk about one other question?
Sure.
Especially so I read in the paper that, Onondaga County, environmental review about Shoppingtown is coming available or hearing.
I read that Uber Brewer can't wait for them to get something done so that they can,
Yeah,
well, also. Part of that is so that the county can move on the Sears and what's the other property that's Macy's, the two properties that are not owned
mhm.
by the same. You know, they have no interest. This is what Kerry Banyan said at a meeting I was at, that it's an extremely expensive process if they have to go through eminent domain to take those two pieces of property. And I think we said apparently the guys from across the street, is it Benderson, who owns the Marshalls shopping center, they own either Sears or Macy's. And they bought it intentionally to block Shopping Town from being developed. Because they don't want competition. So they're probably not gonna just roll over for this. Is that what you're hearing?
The big stumbling block is the former Sears Corporation. I told you his name, you'd recognize it. The gentleman who was the CEO of Sears that drove them into the ground. He owns all the former Sears properties. He owns this property. That's one issue. I believe Benderson owns the Macy's building. Until Onondaga County does eminent domain. I don't see anything going on. Like the last thing I heard, and I know there's ongoing. There are ongoing discussions, but I've been pretty close to them, so I don't know where it is. The Brewers had offered $6 million for the Sears building. Sears wouldn't take it. Irv Raphael came in with his group and offered 6.5. He got pretty far down the road. Sears said that they were going to take the money, and then at the last minute, they pulled out of the deal. So I don't. Until
I'm in the meeting. It's okay, no. that's
somebody pulls the trigger on eminent domain.
Yeah.
With those two jokers, you know, I think we're at a stalemate.
So in the meanwhile, this land is owned by the county, but it's within DeWitt and looks like trash.
Looks horrible.
Can we do anything to enforce code violations to get it cleaned up? Just asking.
She's talking this.
If you drive over there, it looks like hell. The entire site has now been boarded up.
But even just the landscaping, I mean, if
They were there last week. We do landscaping,
well, it's weedy.
but it looks like hell. Right, I mean, I you know, I happen to just be driving by there and kind of that county people were out there. Boarding things up, they were weed eating, but they weren't landscaping, so we drive by, they knock the weeds down, probably is in compliance with New York State property maintenance code. But I'm not sure the violation, so I think there's probably gotta be a discussion, probably at like the Kerry Daniel level. Or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Say, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which of the county legislators has that. I know it's not being, yeah, which is, it is. Because that would be one thing, go to a county legislator and say, this is a county issue. Look at this. It's not the responsibility of the grant. Maybe that would be a way to start. And honestly, it depends who the legislator is. If there's somebody in, you know, running into a paper, maybe they could get somebody done. When the earlier somebody is told to get involved. It's, I know Ed gets blamed all the time in, you know, people's comments on, you know, letters to the editor and Facebook comments and talking. And, you know, say, well, it's not the town of it's property. And we have, you know, they don't keep, you know, Rocky couldn't send a group. They said they can all this stuff.
So can we find a county? Take care of property with.
That would probably have.
Jason, do you know when the environmental meeting is for the county, the presentation on Shopping Town?
I am not sure myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see where it's an issue that we get stuck with the eyesore and the blame and no ability to solve it, even start to, and if you, didn't you say that you and Angela got chased out?
Oh, yeah, we were just doing a little walkabout to kind of think about the environmental impacts of the building there. They shoot us off. We looked really threatening, didn't we, Angela?
So that's where we are for tonight. I'm hoping that for our September meeting, that there will be more of us. And, well, I know Dave will be back. I'm just looking for the date.
Dennis, one quick question about the cedar trees. And Ed, was Ed thinking that somehow the CEA might have some effect on actions by the state?
I think he's hoping to protect those trees so that, yeah, when they're working on 481, somebody just doesn't say, well, just cut all those down. I say, I don't think it would make any sense. They're not theoretically, they're not supposed to do any construction south of, I think Genesee Street, the exit 3 is where there's, I think, supposed to start the work, although they're supposed to address the environmental area, issues on the part of that's 481 to at least Jamesville Road and probably to exit 3. But as far as they're not going to do any widening, no more exits in that area. So there shouldn't be any except, the issues with what the pollution is going to do to damage the trees. If we make sure they don't park their equipment up there or anything, that would be I think the issue to protect that.
There's gonna be all kinds of truck traffic that's gonna have stuff flying off the trucks, bringing rock and gravel and dirt and.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
gonna be endless.
and diesel fuels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're probably gonna be working at night with lights, that's gonna affect things like the bat population.
Right, and the people that live in that area, off Nottingham Road.
I think they already have a plan for a sound barrier right by the Wegmans area, those developments,
Yeah.
I think that's in there.
Yeah, and I've talked to them, and it's like you're talking to people who cannot hear you to say, you cannot put sound barriers in the Rock Cut Valley. Because it's a valley surrounded by basically cliffs on both sides. And the road itself is actually built up off the valley floor. There's no place to put sound. You'd have to build, the Great Berlin Wall along each side to block the sound. And instead, the sound is just going to echo off the Clark Reservation walls and the other side where the quarry is.
So let me ask this group, and I know we don't have enough, I don't think we have a quorum for a vote, but so we're members of the New York State ACC, which regularly Simon Skolnick puts out a summary of what different ACCs are doing in New York State. And we potentially could submit our draft CEA and our draft sustainability policy to NYS ACC, that this is what we've done, waiting board review.
I think we have a quorum. There's 5 of us. And I think if you go through the code, I don't think it ever establishes how many people, board members, DAC members need to be present.
Martha just left, so yeah. With 4 of us.
for this, so
What, I mean, what do people feel about that?
yeah, I can't imagine anybody protesting.
I mean, I wanted to put out the sustainability policy to all kinds of people, because I feel like there's so many communities that could benefit from what the work that we've done. And the same thing with the CEA, you know, these are robust documents, and
Yeah.
yes, that doesn't mean that they don't need tweaking, but.
I don't see a downside. There probably is, but we're not doing anything with it as it is. So hopefully it could do a little bit of good, helping inform other groups. I don't know, are we,
It is enough.
I don't know how the board would feel about, the town board would feel about it. But they've had plenty of time to, to act on this, so I don't know. It's a good question.
You wanna think about it between now and when we get our meeting, hopefully into a couple weeks, see if that happens. If not, think that we've done due diligence on our part and release it,
Yeah,
and then we can reach out to those who weren't here to say that we're considering this, and so people can kind of vote by email.
yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
That sound okay
Sure,
on both the CEA and the sustainability policy?
yeah,
So you're gonna explain in an email to the
Yes,
group. Yeah,
yes.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So we'll just say we sent this information to all the town board members and anticipating being on the agenda on whatever that date was,
The 28th.
the 28th of August. And then say, and that we're also considering, if the board is not taking action, releasing our DAC voted on CEA and sustainability policy to distribute to the New York State ACC groups for their benefit.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good.
Sounds good.
but yeah. Anybody have anything else? In that case, thank you for attending. We'll see you, well, we hope August 28th, and I believe it's the 6th of September is our next meeting.
You'll send out details on that, Dennis, August 28th.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
So I'll send it to Ed and I'll send it to Angela. Can you put us on the agenda? And she's great about. You know, I mean, unless they have some major issue they're addressing that we don't know about. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get on there. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Good.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Doug.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Good night.
National Grid and the guy who's gonna tear down Marco's ever decided he's parked his rig there all summer long. I think it's from June, maybe May or June.
Hit the ladies and then get her out of here.
Good. She was very well behaved.
She did it right, she did it right, I'm almost at it, no, I haven't even had the keys yet. Thanks for letting me bring her in.
But that every time I go by that always practically like that building. Yeah.
Massachusetts, Red. Said they had scheduled that. They have to put 2 switches in the. So it's all for.
I mean, I think a good point on a lot of this, but a dynamo, but who runs a home first in the building? It's obviously they're waiting for the power. This is building. On the side of the street. there is little ones before you get to. Roger Baker wrote an article. Baker Museum. He was like, "This- you don't get speaking about that building, it is been built.
Just call it.
It's a lot.
Very.
They don't understand that city and it's so common. There was, I argued like moving base with Brian and with Sam Gordon. And I totally never said anything about it. But here's a this report where he talks about the informal bike trail. It's a property, they should be part of it. And you're writing a report telling people that you can trespass on this company's property. How can you do that? You're just getting, if these people get hurt. And they'll say, no, it's not a problem. So there it is. Say, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, so. He could have, I said I need the dam, sent him the dam, but I didn't.
Yeah, I know he said that. And that's, Brian's got to come up with